In the 70s, something that came up was that this thing called disco, which all of us kind of went like, ew. It was kind of like very mindless, like bump, 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 and we weren't into it. And then in high school, a girlfriend came to school and said, I have a band for you to listen to. And I'm going like, what? And she brought in a little cassette. And it was on one side was the Sex Pistols, on the other side was the Ramones. She played that for me, and then after that, I kind of was bit by the punk bug going, that's my music, I need to learn more about that. So that started me on my journey. After that, I joined an all-girl band called the Castration Squad that ran for about 2 years, and at the same time is about the time that 45 Grave came out too. So I was kind of jumping in between projects.
I was working with John Daly and Derek Gibson and their company, Hemdale. Derek Gibson actually came to me to tell me about Return of the Living Dead. He said, you know, Dan O'Bannon wants songs in the movie because there's boom boxes throughout the picture. So, you know, go over and sit down. And they were actually editing the film in the house that Hemdale had over in Hollywood, which is just off of Sunset, literally downstairs in the basement. And so, you know, I went down, saw some scenes. Send more cops. The rest is history.
There weren't many movies that were featuring punk music and soundtracks. You might hear a song here and there, but if it wasn't a punk-themed movie, you weren't hearing any punk music. So that kind of stuff really helped make people aware of you know, that genre. I know with us getting songs and being in Repo Man, I mean, it opened up to a whole new audience.
I think that my contribution to this movie was, you know, okay, so how do I figure out how to get what Dan's looking for in relation to punk and get what John's looking for in relation to not paying for it. So my solution for that was to call Bill Hine. Bill ran a company called Green World, which was a big independent distribution company. And he said, well, we've got this label, Enigma, and we've got a lot of great bands, and this will be great.
The West Coast sort of underground punk scene was really vibrant in those days because K-Rock would play indie bands. So you could sell 25,000 records in Southern California based on K-Rock play. So that's kind of how Enigma started. And I just loved the artists that they were signing so much that I decided I wanted to move to California because I loved the Paisley underground scene, the Dream Syndicate, the Bangles, stuff like that, and also the punk rock scene like 45 Grave and TSOL. And so I ended up working for Enigma in Los Angeles. I came there in August of 1984, and one of the first things that came to me was Bill Hine, the president of Enigma, said, there's this movie, something mentioned, whatever, a zombie movie. Would that be something that we want to do? Of course, I completely freaked out because I was a huge fan of the movie Dawn of the Dead, which I had gone to see every afternoon for 2 weeks. And so, of course, I had to be involved. Yeah, the relationship of the Romero films to John Russo, who actually was involved in them. Everybody wanted to be involved. There was no questions. There was no, people were so excited. Essentially, we had like 2 weeks to put together the soundtrack. And we had like a tiny budget. It was like $10,000 in 2 weeks to put it together. So many of the bands that I knew were huge fans of horror films and cult films, and especially, of course, the George Romero movies. Like, say, Rocky Erickson, he had song titles like Creature with the Atom Brain and Two-Headed Dog. So all these artists, I think they had a lot of horror, cinematic song titles and imagery in their music. I mean, the Cramps are aficionados of cult films.
Ooh, baby, your asphalt, Peter hung 10. The Hodads and Grammy say you reach top, answer to the dead, through the lights, the surfing dead, ooh, make it tight. The living dead now, baby, lose their heads now, baby, doing.
I think the Cramps are a perfect fit for a horror movie. I just remember the first time I saw them, I don't know, it was probably, let me date myself here, 1978 perhaps? 78 or 79 at the Whiskey, and it was really dark on stage. It was like low mood lighting, candles all over the stage, and it really had that good creepy feel, but it was a fun creepy feel, not a scary creepy feel. So I think that band in particular, they had that horror aspect.
We thought that since the Cramps were the biggest name that we had involved, we thought that they would have the track for the end title. Unfortunately for them, the song Party Time was put in the movie that works so perfectly that that song had to be the end title song. It was a decision that very disappointed the Cramps, I'll say.
People, when they like my makeup, like, ooh, you're gothic, you're scary and stuff like that. Back then, punk was everything. It was like the girls who wore Cat's Eyes. I mean, most of the punk girls that I hung out with when I was a germette, and I was hanging out with the Germs, most girls looked like me. We tried to get our faces as white as we could, and we did the cat's eyes and the eyebrows and the black lips, and that was just punk. That was girl punk. And, then everyone started pulling away from the scene because, like out here in California, you had after punk came thrash punk. And a lot of us were like not into the thrash punk. So we did our look with our punk, and that became death rock.
How do you kill something that's already dead? Well, how do I know, Fred? I don't know. Let me think.
It was just personal interpretation, because a lot of bands, when they took on the death rock title, they still considered themselves pretty punk, because we would still go to the punk shows. We would still go and, see bands like, Black Flag and stuff like that, even though we like to look dead.
They're back from the grave and ready to party.
When I was a teenager, I was a bad teenager. And one thing that a manager of mine brought up when he was the manager for 485 Grave, he looked it up, and in 1982, I was listed on the most wanted list for civil disobedience and inciting riots. And number 1 was Black Flag, number 2 was the Circle Jerks, number 3 was 45 Grave, and they put extra flag, watch out, because this woman has a big mouth and she will turn a crowd against you. And I go like, I'm doing something right.
Halt! I said halt! Watch it, Steve, I'm crazy!
We had just done the Hell Comes to Your House compilation, and Paul had started shopping our album around. In the early days of punk, we weren't in tune with copywriting or anything like that. We were basically just performing so we can get a meal or a beer or something like that. And that's when we joined the Enigma team. Enigma was more along the lines of like a launching pad label.
The Return of the Living Dead.
There were some amazing entertainers on that soundtrack. I mean, you had the Cramps, you had TSOL, you had like SSQ. Everyone was just like breaking ground right and left. And it was very nice to be a part of it.
The 45 Grave song had come out over the summer, and it was an attempt by Enigma to have them have a crossover hit, because it was produced by Michael Wagner, who's more known for doing metal bands. That song did have some Plan K rock, and I think that was pretty obvious that it fit perfectly.
Bob said to me, he said, let me show you something. And there was a song called Party Time, and he played it against this entire scene when I think it's when the zombies are first coming out of the graves, and and we were just hysterical.
The original Party Time is way different from the metal version that you hear in Return of the Living Dead. Actually, it's a 4-verse song. I would almost say it's like pretty like speed punk. It's a lot different. One night at Madame Wong's, we were playing with a group of heavy metal bands, and our manager went, oh, I booked us with heavy metal bands, what are we gonna do? You're a punk band. And so Paul came up with the concept that it would be funny to slow the whole set down into heavy metal just so we could fit in on the bill. And people had such a strong reaction to Party Time that, Party Time stayed the same heavy metal, slow anthem that you hear in the movie. The story is about a girl named Sabine, and she was a little 5-year-old girl, and this was somewhere in like France, and it was a case of where the parents tortured and abused this little 5-year-old girl, and that they were the last couple to actually be guillotined before they outlawed the guillotine in France. So it was big news over here because it was the last people to get their heads lobbed off. And I felt so moved by the suffering that this poor child put up with that I wrote a song for her. And the original Party Time lyrics were that the record company cut out. They cut out the last verse where I say, I hope wherever she is, I hope it's the eternal birthday party for her. So she will be forever young and forever happy and finally, having a party because it's party time. They were going over the song and they wanted the lyrics to follow the movie a little bit more closely. And they had to convince me to rewrite Party Time. And of course, me being the bitch I am, I was like, I don't want to rewrite my song, those are my lyrics. And then I got in an argument with the guys of going like, oh, well, maybe they can take out all your guitar leads. I'm sure that wouldn't sit well with you. And so the band squabbled for a little bit, and then I sat down and Paul actually helped me construct the new lyrics for the version that's in Return of the Living Dead.
Do you ever fantasize about being killed?
It wasn't until a little bit later on that we saw how much they used the song, because we thought they were just going to use like a little 30-second snippet and go like, okay, at least we got the song into a movie and stuff, and we didn't know how much they had used in the movie until we went to the screening. And now the guys tease me and say, well, aren't you happy you rewrote the lyrics? And I go, yes and no. I would still like my lyrics to be intact.
Hey, we gonna party tonight or what?
Yeah, we are gonna party.
Well, where? Where are we gonna party?
I don't know, somewhere.
My grandmother took me, my brother, and my cousin, and I think we were 5, 8, and 9, on top of Signal Hill, and they had an old drive-in theater below. And we watched Night of the Living Dead, just with all the oil wells in the background, no sound. And why she would do that, I mean, I have no idea, but it really stuck, and it was like very, very scary.
So when we're gonna party tonight, Tina?
Oh, you guys, that'd be really rad, but I'm supposed to meet Freddie when he gets off work.
For me, it was just party time all the time, we just did, everybody was in bands, and our manager, I think at that point, was Mike Veraney, who was very into, B film and all, really schooled and all that stuff. So, he kind of knew what he was doing. We didn't give him just one song. They listened to the record and they picked out the song that they wanted. Well, what's funny is I wrote this song, before I became a full-fledged, junkie at one point in my life. And this song was kind of my take on what it would be like to be strung out on drugs, I got nothing for you. You can look under my rug. I got no smack for you. You want to transfer that drug. I got no tears for you. I got nothing to worry about. I got no fear for you. My guns, they just lay about. I was young and, did a lot of drugs, but to actually be sick and, I might have, saw Panic in Needle Park or something, I don't remember. Suicide is just a state of mind. Not for me, I got my places to hide. Day to day, nights awake. Stealing is my way of life. I gotta pay my bills today. Where'd I leave my knife? Got nothing for you. I got nothing for you. I got nothing for you. Can't kick that Jones, no. Can't kick that Jones, no.
That's beautiful, thank you.
You're welcome.
I dance among the dead, but very soon I'll need to hunt the scent of blood instead. I will make love till we die.
SSQ was very synthesized. The sequencing and then the combinations and the MIDI revolution. We were just a techno band. The band was originally called Q, after the 007 character. We were sued by Quincy Jones because he had Q Productions and a horror movie came out called Q. And then when we signed with Enigma, we had to change the name to SSQ. You know, back then was the beginning of, ooh, let the soundtrack be all these popular tunes or these artists. And Enigma was really good at that. They were very groundbreaking. So it was literally a call from Bill just saying, look, we're going to do the soundtrack for this movie. And we're going to use, these, the Cramps, these, all the different bands that are on our label. Plus, we're going to farm out a couple more. And since it's kind of campy and it's going to be a bit of an electronic score, we'd like you guys to compose a couple of tunes that are major themes, like Trash's theme, and Tonight We'll Make, Love Till We Die and all that for the movie. And then we'd like you guys to do some score points too that we're going to use in some of the graveyard scenes and stuff like that. And that was the cool thing for me, is because you got to stretch out and do some stuff that, 3-minute pop tune. Okay, make the hook. No, we didn't have to do that. There's a drum pulse that goes through the whole movie. And what we kept picturing is, campy zombies doing their thing to like a dead drum cadence, but with Simmons drums, so it wasn't a typical snare drum. It had like electronic, and we tried to keep that kind of sense of rhythm through the whole thing.
Do you ever fantasize about being killed?
Never.
Do you ever wonder about all the different ways of dying?
It just ended up real good. They played it, and the guy was in the furnace, and then they started that song, Burn the Flames. Here I sit at my organ and piano, and the flames seem to burn glaringly higher. And the eyes that stare glaringly through the darkness, though they have no form, there is no need for alarm. There's no need for alarm, so burn, burn the flames, higher and higher, Burn the flames, never to expire, Yeah. It's just about some of those pictures you've seen, not really photographs, but drawings, of ghouls sitting around a place where there would be an organ and torches of flames sitting around, and have it being lit by the flames while they played their organ, and to bring out the ghoul in you, I'd like to call my rock and roll punk too a new wave, but I was very pleased the way it fit in, and it seemed like my song had friends with all the other songs,
I actually had an interest in horror from the time I was a kid. when I was 7 or 8. I saw Invasion of the Body Snatchers, the original. Saw The Creeping Unknown, which is, the Quatermass Experiment, the first one, and Enemy from Space, Quatermass 2. Saw all 3 of those when I was really pretty young. And those 3 still have scenes in them that give me the chills. One thing I didn't want to do with the Flesh Eaters, that there was a lot of really, to me, punk rock at the time that was kind of corny. It was kind of pretentious, and it was too over the top. And I was trying to maintain the kind of literary sensibility and integrity of material that I think X has maintained over the years. X is a little bit more of a nebulous name for a band, where the Flesh Eaters is pretty graphic, and you don't think of literary influences when you think of the Flesh Eaters. A friend of mine, he actually got me an interview with Tobe Hooper when Tobe Hooper was originally going to direct Return of the Living Dead. Hooper's involvement was going to be more hardcore serious, there's humor in Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but it is so terrifying that you realize that these horrible maniacs, homicidal maniacs, can be funny at the same time they're being homicidal maniacs. And you still believe it, you don't think this is a joke when you see that movie. He said he wanted me to have a part in the movie as one of the punks, and they were going to use a song or two from the Flesh Eaters. And it kept dragging on for months, and then finally the thing wasn't going into production, and he had to go to Europe, and it must have been for Life Force. And then I didn't hear about it until it was, right before it came out, and Enigma had the soundtrack for it. I just done an album with Enigma, and they knew about the Flesh Eaters, of course, so when it came time for Return of the Living Dead, he asked me if they could use Eyes Without a Face.
Well, yeah, that sounds like a shitty job.
Well, it isn't the President of the United States, but at least he makes enough money to buy something.
Well, yeah, maybe you'll buy something from me, huh?
You don't like your suicide.
There are actually versions of the movie which don't have our song in it. The thing about the song Young Fast Iranians is it was meant to be a parody of arena rock that we all grew up listening to and more mocking as punks. And then, so the heavy metal scream at the beginning, that was a deliberate cliche, but it actually turns out to be this really great scream, and people have been coming up to me ever since and going, wow, can you really do that scream? I was like, yeah, it surprised me too.
Well, yeah, what the fuck is Freddie up to these days anyway?
It's full of rock and roll cliches, but it's kind of written from this perspective of this kid who is a young, fast Iranian, because, as some of you may know, when Iran was at war with Iraq, they got young kids to volunteer to run through landmines ahead of the army in order to get the army there through safely. So, we were kind of like mocking all that and the use of religion to get kids to, blow themselves up, basically. I guess some people call it a cover of an FU song, but it's the same song that was written by Steve and played by most of the same people, so we don't consider it a cover, we just consider it a different version, because when we changed the name to Straw Dogs, we were still basically the FUs, I thought the movie was irreverent to everything, it made the punks look really dumb, it made the military look really dumb, and, maybe that's as it should be, maybe nobody should take themselves that seriously, especially people who have the power to, destroy an entire city or a nation.
Wait a minute, where's Freddie?
He was gone, he wasn't here when I showed up.
The Tall Boys formed in 1983, a sort of a mix really between psychobilly, the music that was started with the Meteors in 1980, together with some rock and roll and some more garagey psychedelic influences. So I think psychobilly has always been based on horror. It's how it started, the word psycho in the psychobilly. And from the very beginning with the Meteors, we used those images a lot. The guitarist Paul used to spit chicken's blood during shows. The influences were always there. the first Meteors logo was Nigel the bassist, sort of done as Frankenstein. Our feelings when we were asked to participate in the film were extremely excited, and myself and Nigel, the singer, went over to the manager's office, and we had a VHS copy of the film without a soundtrack, so it had all the directions on everything, and we watched it, really liked the film, and our manager said, well, there's a part here that they need some music for, which was a scene where the punks go into the graveyard. So we went down, we were in Camden at the time, went down to the local pub, and he said, don't come out of the pub until you've written the song. And so the lyrics were written on beer mats, and we came back a few hours later with the song written. We were lucky enough to be invited to the premiere of the film, which was at the Scala in London, so in our hometown. It was great. It was the first time I'd ever been to a film premiere, not quite red carpet stuff, but we hadn't seen a version of it before then with the music in, and to see the scene come up and our music come on was a fantastic thing.
When you go into a movie theater and you hear some of the stuff you did at that volume, with that sonic quality, with that kind of a picture, it was kind of like the first time I ever heard myself on the radio. It was that same kind of goosebumpy kind of like, the visuals were literally overwhelming, and in a really cool way.
Since it was the first time I had ever done something like that, I was pretty astonished.
The whole band went together to see the movie. You know, it was you know, God, we were, I think, drinking and smoking in the theater and laughing. It was a funny movie, you know, and it's a little time capsule right there of that one, you know, that one little moment.
I think it really met up to the standard of all those films like that, you know. You know, it was real good. I loved it.
I'm pleased that I'm involved with a movie where the first reference to zombies eating brains was ever referred to, and it's almost like people just think when they think of zombies, they think of brain eating, but really it was originated in that movie, and I think solely in that movie.
And then all these people are coming up to me, you know, saying, oh my God, Party Time was in Return of the Living Dead, and this movie made such an impact on me, and it kind of boggles the mind for a little bit, because you don't realize that something that maybe took about 2 weeks of your life, and you really didn't think anything of it, because, oh, well, let's do a movie, let's do an album, let's do a show, let's do this, and you're on the schedule. You don't realize, you know, that you made this, you know, big contribution.
So here we have the original American version of the album, which is the movie poster. Here we have the French version on New Rose Records, and this is from the French movie poster, which is, obviously, it's a great image. And then there's two English versions. I don't remember why there's two different versions. I think maybe they put out one and then the movie poster came out and they changed it to the movie poster. And then we did the picture disc, which I put snippets of dialogue from the film between all the songs. And at the end, I think it's side one, there's a lock groove, and what it says is one of the best lines from the movie, "If you love me, you'll let me eat your brains. Brains, brains." I have a sealed one already at home. And now I'll see this for the first time since 1985. Oh, you're gonna love the other side. It's a picture of trash.